team, thank you for joining me once again, where people continue without let or hindrance to be wrong, oh so very wrong, all over the interwebs, don't they, boys and girls? Yes, they do. Today's willing contendant is one Cyris Kambhatta, who wants to tell us all about how to pick the right, apparently, low-fat diet for diabetes. All right, Cyris. Tell us what you think you know, and we'll put you right where you're wrong. Spoiler, boys and girls. As usual, that's everywhere. All right, Cyris, off you go.
Did you know that a low-fat diet is vastly better for diabetes health than a high-fat diet like the ketogenic diet?
False, Cyris. That is absolutely, fundamentally false, that statement. It is not factual in any way, shape, or form, and it is not supported by any scientific evidence whatsoever of any kind. That is your ideology that you've just espoused there, and not remotely a statement of fact of any kind. Actually, it's irresponsible, misanthropic behavior is what it actually is. And I know I say it every time, but let's get it out of the way early here. My word. My word. Goodness me. Goodness me. Do tell us, Cyris, all about how to be healthy, please. We're all waiting with bated breath on how to be healthy from you.
As it turns out, high-fat diets are actually a ticking time bomb.
False. That's ideology once again, not a statement of fact. It's untrue.
Despite excellent short-term results, they can be disastrous.
And medium-term and long-term, and can is a great word, isn't it, Cyris? Because it leaves the other thing entirely on the table. And the other thing is what actually does occur when a person eats a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, that being 100% carnivore. The muscle, meats, and associated flesh of mostly large ruminant animals, grass-fed if you please. That is the way to go. No evidence of any deleterious long-term effects of any kind are apparent anywhere in the literature or elsewhere. But do tell us all about health, though, Cyris. Goodness me, goodness me.
In the long term. It's low-fat diets in general that are actually high in whole carbohydrates that have actually been proven in the science.
Proven, here we go. So before you even say it, the answer is going to be false, Cyris, because there are no cause and effect relationships that have been proven by experimental science in human beings of any kind, anywhere in the literature. You are just about to make up some absolute nonsense, I'm quite sure. Let's hear it, though.
Scientific research to lower your blood glucose.
So? Compared with a mixed macro diet, yes, but not enough, as evidenced by your own A1C lack of control and that of your little business partner Robbie's, Cyris. Neither one of you is able to control your own A1C. So what makes you think in a purple fit you're qualified to tell somebody else how to control their A1C? You don't know how to control your own. You'll also find that a diet which does not contain carbohydrates will also lead to the complete control of blood glucose as well, Cyris. Give people the whole story, nothing but the story. Don't give people ideology. Don't give people theology. Don't be a buffoon. Goodness me. Wow. Wow. Whew. Sorry, I'm not allowed to comment on it, so I won't.
And your blood pressure and your cholesterol, both.
Blood pressure and cholesterol. Yes, blood pressure also goes down when you eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet. And cholesterol does not need to go down. In fact, lowered cholesterol below about 220 total is associated with an increase in the incidence of death from all causes, as well as every sub-cause. Heart disease, cerebrovascular accidents, cancer, you know, all of it. Less cholesterol, more death. Right, what's next?
In the short term and in the long term, and improve many other biomarkers at the same time.
Well, hang on, lowered cholesterol is not an improved biomarker. We've just seen how it's deleterious. in terms of associative data anyway.
So in this 2-part video, this is the second of 2, you will learn how to pick the right kind of low-fat diet for diabetes.
There is no such thing, Cyris. The right diet for diabetes is a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, which I've already described more than adequately. And that's not a low-fat diet. So wrong.
You'll learn exactly which foods to pick and which foods to avoid.
Not from you, Cyris, they won't. What they will learn how to do is to follow a lifestyle which leads them inexorably, in the same way as you have experienced yourself, to a complete lack of acceptable blood glucose control in the long term. Your own A1C is completely out of control, son. And so people following what you do will lead them to the same place, won't it, son? God, really? Wow.
And we're going to answer some frequently asked questions about low-fat diets that we get.
You mean you're going to give some ideology and some false disinformation to people again? All right, can't wait for that.
All the time. Now, when it comes to diabetes, choosing the right diet can be very important. And
yes, indeed. Life and death, in fact.
Can completely change your life. So make sure you watch part 1, and then let's get right into this video. Hey, I'm Cyris.
Why would we watch your video, Cyris? You have shown unequivocally and absolutely in a public forum on more than one occasion several things. Number 1, that you can't control your own A1C, remember? Number 2, neither can your business partner, Robbie. He can't control his either, so neither one of you seems to know what's going on with that. And 3, you've publicly stated on more than one occasion, at least, that you don't want to solve type 1 diabetes. Here it is.
Right? Now, if there was a magic pill that I could take today that would eliminate type 1 diabetes, I swear to you, I would not take it. I would not take it because I don't want to get rid of type 1 diabetes.
Well, of course he doesn't want to solve it because that would undercut his bottom right-hand corner at the end of every tax year, wouldn't it? And of course he doesn't want to help people to resolve because a patient cured is a customer lost, isn't it, Cyris? Whoopsie.
Cyris Kambhatta. I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 2002. My co-founder, Robbie Barbero, and I have been coaching people to manage type 1 and type 1.5 diabetes.
Pity that neither one of you is able to do that effectively, remotely at all. Neither one of you has control of your blood glucose. So why you would think you should be coaching others begars belief. It's incredible.
And reverse insulin resistance, which is the underlying condition that causes prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and gestational diabetes.
False again, Cyris Kambhatta. False. No. The concept that you're referring to, the construct of insulin resistance, is a symptom of diabetes, not the cause of it. You have the cause and the effect 180 degrees out of phase with reality there, sunshine. Wrong. Totally wrong. Okay? Goodness me. Diabetes is elevated blood sugar and nothing else. It is not underpinned by anything. It is an overabundance of carbohydrate in the blood. That's what diabetes is. An overabundance of carbohydrate in the blood causes the cells to become acutely insulin resistant, as it should, absolutely. That's normal functioning and not pathological in any way, shape or form. And should the blood glucose level remain consistently elevated because of, pouring in more and more and more contraindicated unnecessary carbohydrate toxins 4, 5, and 6 times a day, every day of your stupid life, Cyris, then the acute insulin resistance, as you call it, it's actually just activation of the Randall cycle, becomes chronic, doesn't it? Yes. So which is the cause and which is the effect? The cause is the sugar. The effect is the so-called insulin resistance. It is not the other way around, Cyris. You buffoon. What's next?
He's using a simple, easy to understand, and very effective low-fat, plant-based whole food.
If it's very effective, Cyris, why hasn't it been effective for you or for Robbie? Because neither one of you has control of your blood glucose, remember? Facts though, boys and girls. Just the facts here.
Food diet. It's actually a secret to optimal diabetes health that, for whatever reason...
Oh, it's a secret. Of course it's a secret, because remember, Cyris doesn't want to cure diabetes. He wants to keep you behooving to his system of paying him lots of money so that he can tell you things that will not gain you control of your blood glucose. Good.
Reason most people don't know anything about. The question is, are you ready to master diabetes? So let's get...
Yes. And the way to do that is to eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet. Period. Simple. There you go. Free. Not even charging you for that little gem. You're welcome. I'm really such a philanthropist, me. Unlike this guy here, who is, I don't even know what he is. What is this that we're looking at here, that we're listening to? Other than dangerous, contraindicated disinformation of the highest order, misanthropy of the highest order, fleecing of vulnerable people of their money in order to give them disinformation that will not particularly get them to where they need to be, which is ultimately at an A1C level of 4.8 and below. But absolutely take the advice of two blokes whose A1C sits around 6. Up to 6.4, apparently. Well, that's not blood glucose control at all, is it, boys? Sorry about that. Facts again.
Get right into the meat of the topic.
Yeah, the meat. Yes, get right into the meat. That's what you ought to do if you're a diabetic or if you're not.
Intended. How do you pick the right type of low-fat diet for
There isn't one. Low-fat diet is a mistake.
Diabetes, because all low-fat diets are not created equal. Well,
no, that's true, but all low-fat diets are a mistake.
Fortunately, we've spent more than 2 decades perfecting a diet that hits all of the key points of an ideal low-fat diet. Now,
then why can't you control your blood glucose with this perfect diet that you've taken 2 decades over perfecting, Cyris? Why is it not working for you? Or Robbie? Please explain. We'll wait. We actually won't, because we know there is no explanation for that, except your bottom right-hand corner requires you to continue lying misanthropically and fleecing people of their money.
Now, a low-constructed low-fat diet must fulfill the following criteria. There are 4 main points. Number 1, it has to contain carbohydrate-rich foods that are minimally processed or completely unprocessed.
No. An optimal diet contains no carbohydrates of any kind.
Such as fruits, starchy vegetables, legumes.
Other than the very, very minuscule amount you'll find actually inherently in meat. Because meat does contain some carbohydrate, by the way.
Whole grains. Number 2, it does not contain any refined carbohydrate-rich foods.
Makes no difference. Carbohydrates are carbohydrates. They all break down to the same thing, Cyris, which is glucose, except for fructose, which goes through a slightly different process in the liver and is generally metabolized directly, for the most part, to triacylglycerides. But all other carbohydrates break down to glucose. They can't be differentiated in terms of evilness. They're all evil. They're all unnecessary. The exact dietary requirement for carbohydrates in human beings, physiologically, is not 1 single gram ever. None at all. What's next?
Like crackers or chips or pastas or sodas or cookies or brownies or pastries. Even though they taste good, they're not good for your overall health. Number 3.
No carbohydrates are good for your overall health in the diet. None at all.
It contains no more than 15% of total calories as fat.
Well, that's a mistake, because 4.5 million years at least of evolution, Cyris, tells us otherwise. We have derived the vast majority of our effective energy intake in the form of largely saturated animal fat, largely that of large ruminant animals grass-fed on the plains, pretty much. That's what we're evolved for. 4.5 million years of both positive and negative selection pressures. That's how our organ systems are aligned. That's how our metabolic systems are aligned. That's why one of us, Cyris, is fit ish and healthy at more than 50 years of age and not suffering from any litany, really, shopping list of autoimmune deficiencies, unlike yourself, son. You have at least 4 or 5 serious autoimmune problems, son, that I am aware of. You have serious health concerns, son. You are not going to make old bones, frankly, because of your health concerns that you are utterly and completely failing to manage with your totally inappropriate diet and your totally inappropriate advice to others to do the same. The law of compensation means that you will be paid commensurate to your service to mankind. You are doing a vast disservice to mankind, and the universe will pay you off commensurate with that. Okay? Sorry about that. Facts again.
Number 4, it contains 0. That's right, 0 oils.
Yes, that's correct. You should never consume any oils whatsoever.
Including, but not limited to, olive oil, coconut oil, canola oil, or trendy oil.
Coconut oil should not really be called oil. It's not an oil, it's a fat. It's actually more saturated than most animal fat. It contains very, very little of the problematic poly and monounsaturates. Coconut oil, coconut fat, so long as all the plant-based toxins are well and truly filtered away from it, and it's not manufactured under heat and pressure conditions that can lead to problems, it's probably pretty innocuous. Actually, Cyris,
like avocado oil. Now, there are a few characteristics of this diet that are very important to understand. The first is that this diet
pity Cyris doesn't understand any of them.
Is extremely high in plants. Now,
well, that's a mistake, because plants is the word, not plants. Plants, by the way, Cyris, are very, very high in plant-based toxins, placed there precisely by the plants in order to discourage animals from consuming them. Plants, you may have noticed, can't run away from you. They can't fly away. They can't dive into a pond, hide under a rock, crawl away somewhere, or attack you with their claws and teeth or whatever. They have to sit there and take it. And so as such, they have evolved differently from animals, and the way that they defend themselves at large is with toxins. Toxins that will slowly but inexorably lead you to your death, Cyris. And in the meantime, precipitate the expression of, maybe multiple very, very serious autoimmune conditions that will absolutely shorten your lifespan on this planet, Cyris. Conditions which you could absolutely get under control and ameliorate almost to 100% level for most of them, simply by consuming a diet which is in line with your genetic gift as a human being, for example. Maybe you could try that. No? Okay.
There's a huge emphasis that we put on plant-based eating. Now, low-fat diet...
Well, that's a mistake, Cyris. That is an absolute mortal mistake. Wrong. Human beings are not designed to eat plants. Not at all. We are designed to gain our nutrition from consuming animals.
Often have a bad reputation for being boring, but the truth is that they don't need to be. In fact, low fat does not mean low flavor. In fact,
but what it does mean is high carbohydrate, which is contraindicated, absolutely. It also means high fiber, which is contraindicated, absolutely. Furthermore, it means high levels of plant-based toxins, absolutely and utterly contraindicated. So strike 3 out of 3, you're out of here, Cyris. It's also completely at odds with your genetic gift as a human being. It is not species appropriate nor species specific for you as a human being. It's just ridiculous, fundamentally ridiculous from the ground up. And there's not one scrap of science to support your ridiculous notion otherwise. Okay?
Our recommended diet includes a wide selection of vegetables and
mistake.
Fruit.
Even bigger mistake. Fructose, real problem. Serious problem.
At every meal. And we also put a huge emphasis on whole grains like intact barley or quinoa, or even legumes like lentils, beans, and peas.
But you can recommend that until the cows come home, Cyris. It won't make it correct, indicated, or utilitarian in the human nutrition area, because it isn't any of those things.
It also doesn't mean that you can't have fun either if you choose to eat a plant-based diet.
Fun? Food is nutrition, Cyris. The reason that human beings eat is so that we might live. It is not the other way around. If food is your only source of fun in your life, I suggest very seriously that you take a good, long, hard look at yourself if you can bear it, Cyris. All right?
You may not have known it, but there are some pretty amazing plant-based fat-free salad dressings that you can buy in the grocery.
Oh, God. Looks like KhumSplatta, doesn't it? Kambhatta. Cyris. Don't know. What's next?
Grocery store, as well as spices that can really change the personality of your dish. And there's a very simple way that you can use very easy cooking techniques to put an incredible kick into your food that take it to the next level. Now, if you're like a lot of people who are thinking, well, there's no way to make eating a plant-based diet that fun, then you might actually be surprised. Click the subscribe.
No. Oh, dear. It just gets more and more ridiculous from these clowns every single time they post a video, doesn't it?
Subscription button and turn on the notifications, because we are going to be showing you a lot of really innovative ways to make very tasty and filling comfort-based meals.
Yes, very, very innovative, very, very effective ways of absolutely giving up any hope whatsoever of controlling your own blood glucose, Cyris. There's no way to escape this. There is no way around this. Under no circumstances whatever, in any plane of existence or reality, Cyris, is it remotely valid to suggest that the solution to having too much glucose in your blood is to pour more and more and more carbohydrates down your ridiculous neck every single day. All of which break down to glucose pretty much, except for the fructose thing. Okay? The solution to too much glucose is not adding more glucose, Cyris. It cannot possibly be. There is no way around this. You lose. Ridiculous. What's next?
You might be pretty surprised. Can be very tasty. The next thing that's very important is to choose whole foods at all times.
Why? And what's a whole food? Is a piece of steak a whole food? It is. But would you class it as such?
Whole foods matter. A whole food is a food that is minimally processed or completely unprocessed and is
right. So meat, a steak would be fantastic then.
As close to
would processing involve 100, 150 years of genetic manipulation of the plant stock to turn it into something completely unlike what nature provided as well, Cyris? Would that be processing of some kind? Perhaps. Who knows?
What it is found in nature. For example.
In nature, yes. So that counts out absolutely every single fruit and vegetable that you could go to the supermarket or greengrocer and buy, Cyris, today. Every single one of those is the result of 150 years at least of genetic manipulation by humans, which is a form of processing. Whoops. Facts again. Sorry about those.
A whole grain like barley would be considered whole. And it hasn't been processed to remove all the things like the germ and the bran that are extremely rich in fiber.
And also anti-nutrients, toxins, problematic proteins. Boy, this boy's incredible, isn't he?
Micronutrients. Similarly, for fruits and vegetables, they're fresh foods that haven't been processed in any way.
Unless they're not fresh, in which case they're not fresh. And they have been processed by 150 years of genetic manipulation.
Okay? And they don't need to be heat treated or blended in order to eat them whole. The next aspect that's important is that whole grains are actually your friend.
No, they're not, Cyris. They are absolutely anything but. Demonstrably so. I mean, one of the things that can happen when you consume a diet consisting largely of inappropriate, toxic, pro-inflammatory substances like plants, Cyris, is all vastly, completely uncontrolled, very serious, life-threatening autoimmune problems, for example.
There's a lot of propaganda that tells you that whole grains are bad for you, that you should.
Propaganda, yes, good. So you're not guilty of any propagandizing of any kind, are you not, Cyris? With your ridiculous, contraindicated, pustulous, excremental ideas about nutrition.
Avoid them because they're going to cause an insulin spike and a blood glucose spike. And when that happens, that's going to cause your blood glucose to go high. But the truth is that that only happens when you already have a baseline level of insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance is a construct and a concept. It is not measurable. There is no piece of kit that measures insulin resistance, Cyris. What you are talking about is what you physiologically note upon following your blood glucose curve for a time following a given bolus of food, under an acute or subchronic or even chronic activation of the Randall cycle, doing precisely and exactly what it should absolutely do, and that is protect the cells from glycation. It's ameliorable in the vast majority of human beings in less than an hour of intervention from someone like myself, who is actually a vastly qualified and experienced clinician and who knows how to do this. You, on the other hand, Cyris, have an A1C that sits around 6, as does your little business partner, Robbie. Okay, so one of us knows how to get to the root of this problem and solve it. The problem, by the way, being elevated blood glucose, not insulin, not insulin resistance. Elevated blood glucose is the problem. That's what needs solving. And I'll tell you what, you will not solve that by pouring more and more glucose into your system. Exogenous glucose that is contraindicated, unnecessary, and immediately toxic. Cyris. On top of the plant toxins, the glucose itself is toxic. Okay? Straightforward, really.
When you are in the process of reversing insulin resistance, then your ability to eat whole grains goes up, and it goes up significantly. Now, whole grains are not the boogeymen that you might believe that they are. In fact, they're a great place to get the nutrients and a significant increase in fiber, which is very important.
Number one, also, along with the nutrients that you'll find in whole grains, you'll also find a fair whack of anti-nutrients which cancel out the benefits largely of the nutrients, actually. Grains have been historically and always will be in future as well, Cyris, a subsistence form of pseudo-nutrition for humans, which will not lead you to optimal robustitude, health, and longevity. You can survive for an extended period on such a destitute diet, absolutely, but you will not profit in terms of your health from so doing, absolutely. And now you're about to start talking about fiber, which you're going to get absolutely, fundamentally, totally, completely wrong. So I'll let you do that and I'll correct it where it's wrong, and that's going to be everywhere because you don't know anything about this. What's next?
Important because most Americans actually are fiber insufficient. And
how can you be insufficient of something that you require not 1 single gram of ever? It's like saying I'm insufficient in poison. I'm insufficient in cyanide, for example. How can I be insufficient in it? I don't need any of it.
And if you're trying to increase your fiber intake,
why would you want to increase your fiber intake? There is no benefit to you in so doing.
then whole grains are a very simple place that you can get them from. Now, you have to make sure that they are as whole as possible, otherwise known as AWAP, okay? And we want to make sure that they're not refined or processed into flour first and then reconstituted into baked products. Now, low-fat diets encourage whole grain choices like barley and brown rice and quinoa and amaranth and whole wheat.
All mistakes. Absolutely every one of those things is a mistake, and none of those things should be in a human diet in any significant amount whatsoever.
Huge fans of all of those, and evidence-based research demonstrates that people...
Evidence-based research. You going to cite any of that? Cyris? Any at all? No? You're just going to say the words evidence-based research. But where is it? Let's have a look at it. Let's analyze it. Let's see if it is indeed evidence-based.
People who put more of these whole grains into their diet actually have a lower incidence and a lower prevalence of diabetes.
Wrong. False. That's not true, Cyris. At all. That is a lie. There is no evidence anywhere in the literature to support that claim. False.
Another thing to take into consideration is that convenience foods, no matter how tasty they are actually not good for you. I know that may sound like a little bit of a stretch, but hear me out, okay? We recommend avoiding processed convenience foods as much as possible. Things like artificial sweeteners like aspartame or hydrogenated vegetable oils that you find in products like margarine. These are dietary napalm, okay?
Sure. As is unnecessary, toxic exogenous glucose, Cyris. It's in the same list, as is fiber, as are all the anti-nutrients and toxins you will find in plant material, Cyris. All just as contraindicated.
Okay. Do your best to minimize your intake of anything that comes in a package, a bottle, a can, and do your best to eat as much unpackaged food as possible and buy as much as you can from the produce section or from the bulk section because that's where whole food lives. Now,
No, it isn't. Whole food for human beings you'll find in the butcher's department. Food for human beings is the meat and fat of animals, Cyris, and not plants at all. In fact,
it's a good guess that brightly colored packaged foods, even if they scream the word low fat and even have the words low fat printed on them, may not be the optimal decision because, again,
because they'll contain plant material, which is contraindicated.
And they come in a package, which means they were likely processed before they got to the grocery store. Another thing to take into account is that you shouldn't fear fruits. Now,
nobody fears any food. What a ridiculous statement.
Fruits are another boogeyman for people living with diabetes because marketing all over the internet and all over social media says don't eat fruit. If you eat fruit, fruit equals sugar. Sugar causes a blood sugar spike. Sugar causes an insulin spike, and that's going to make you more diabetic. I'm sure.
Except that you'd be hard pressed to eat enough fruit to get a significant insulin spike. You will absolutely get one, yes, but you will struggle to get anything like the insulin spike you would get off a piece of white bread, for example. Fruit is problematic for a whole suite of other reasons around the fact that it contains fructose, which is absolutely the worst form of carbohydrate you can put into your body. For a myriad of reasons beyond the scope of this video, stick around my channel. I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point.
Sure, you've seen it before. Trust me, I've seen it all over the place and it is everywhere. Again, just like the whole grain argument, fruit is a boogeyman if you already are living with a heightened state of insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance? No. If you are living with chronically activated Randall cycle, the solution is to stop doing that. And you can do that within 60 minutes of getting the appropriate advice from someone who is appropriately experienced, knowledgeable, and qualified to give it to you. And that is not Cyris Kambhatta or Robbie Barbaro, as evidenced clearly by their own failure to support their own health and to ameliorate an entirely ameliorable situation for both of them. Absolutely take advice from these two clowns if you want to. It's your funeral, boys and girls. Absolutely. Your choice. Or come and listen to someone who knows what they're talking about.
As you reverse the insulin resistance process and become very insulin sensitive, your tolerance for carbohydrates, and especially for fruit carbohydrate, goes up.
Tolerance for poison. Why would you want to be tolerant to poison? Given that you need Given that you need absolutely no carbohydrates in your diet ever, not 1 gram ever, why would you do that or want tolerance to it? Let's move on. Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
And that's a good thing, okay? We strongly encourage that you eat fruit and you eat a significant amount of it on a daily.
Is that one of the reasons why your own A1C is completely out of control, Cyris? Maybe? One of the many reasons?
Basis, because fruit is extremely micronutrient dense, and that's a good thing for you.
No, it isn't. It's nothing of the sort. Fruit is largely water with a bit of sugar and some contraindicated fiber. Some acids, usually. That's about it.
For you. Now, low fat doesn't mean low carb. And I know that may sound like a very simplistic thing to say, but there's a very large distinction here.
Low fat absolutely necessarily means high carb if you're going to get in enough energy in total.
The lower the fat content, generally speaking, the higher the carbohydrate content. And especially if that comes from whole carbohydrates, then you're putting yourself in the right position for...
No, false. That is a mistake. It leads to all sorts of things like uncontrolled A1C, Cyrus, and the expression of multiple, vastly problematic, life-threatening, life-shortening, almost certainly autoimmune problems, Cyrus, for example. It leads to poor health, cause and effect. It's a mistake. What's next?
Long-term success. Now, as you read about in our book in detail, we talk about the health of your muscles, the health of your liver, and the health...
Things about which you clearly know absolutely nothing, Cyrus, nothing at all whatsoever.
Of your brain, and how important it is to maintain the function of these organs over the course of time. And
so if that was truly the most important thing to you, Cyrus, then what you would do is avoid those things that are destroying the function of all of those organs and tissues in your body as we speak. You would get your A1C under control. And the way to do that, son, is to stop eating plants and eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, which I've described more than adequately, both here and elsewhere, many times. This is not rocket science.
These three organs rely on an available supply 24/7 of glucose.
And that's why the body creates all the glucose that is required for the purposes of all those tissues itself, and it does that from non-glucose precursors, non-toxic non-glucose precursors, Cyrus, and it only makes glucose in the amount required. It doesn't pour in vastly too much. Completely different situation, isn't it? It's called gluconeogenesis. Go and look it up, son. We've known about this for a very, very long time.
Glucose comes mainly from carbohydrate energy. So when you're consuming...
No, glucose can come from also gluconeogenesis, and that's where it should come from. Goodness me, this isn't rocket science.
In fruits, you get increased fiber content, which is awesome.
No, it isn't. Fiber is a mistake.
Get an increased micronutrient content.
No, there's very little micronutrient to be found in fruit.
Which is fantastic.
Nonsense.
You get an increased glucose content, which is fantastic.
No, it isn't. That's the very thing that is problematic. That's the very thing that underpins your vastly uncontrolled A1C and that of your little mate Robbie, Cyrus. That's the very thing that is at its core what the expression of your disease process is. And that is elevated blood glucose, by the way. You absolute clown. You couldn't make this easier for me if you tried, son. Incredible.
Again, if your level of insulin resistance is coming down or is already low. And in addition to that, you also have a significant increase in your phytochemical intake, which is very good because phytochemicals are these little plant materials.
Phytochemicals is a buzz term. It puts together a concept, another construct, that of plants being good for you somehow, and says, here are some chemicals we get from plants that are good for you. While at the same time, in parallel, completely ignoring the toxins, poisons, pro-inflammatory substances, substances that will absolutely exacerbate things like hugely life-threatening and life-shortening autoimmune dysfunctions variously. Cyrus, for example, and completely ignoring the fact that at large as a whole, in the real world, the consumption of plants is absolutely, utterly and totally contraindicated, especially for those with diabetes.
that are very effective at reversing disease processes in many tissues. Now, I'm going to say this one more time. I sound like a broken record, but if you already are living with a high level of insulin resistance, then
You do sound like a broken record. You also sound like an ignorant little boy. Insulin resistance. How do I measure insulin resistance, Cyris? What piece of kit can I use? What is the metric? What is the measurement unit of insulin resistance? What is that? Doesn't exist. You're an absolute clown here. You're completely out of your depth. What is the disease process we are talking about? It's diabetes. How is diabetes diagnosed? How does it express? What is the pathology? It is elevated blood glucose and nothing else. What do we do to ameliorate and solve the situation? We stop pouring exogenous, unnecessary, toxic carbohydrates down our stupid necks every day of our life. That's what we do. Problem solved. What is next, for goodness sake?
And eating fruit is not going to be possible. I know it myself. We've coached thousands of people through this. You have to become less insulin resistant over the course of weeks to months. And when you do
No, you can do it in 60 minutes, actually.
that, you earn the ability to eat more fruit. And when you earn the ability to eat more fruit,
See, if you have to step back from a precipice of what is ultimately complete organ system failure in order to tolerate a higher level of toxins, surely that should be your clue straight away. That is not food and not something that you ought to be looking to be putting into your body. My word, this is so obvious. It couldn't be more obvious if it jumped up and bit you on the backside. You have to earn the ability to put this toxin in your body. No, you need to understand and take the message on board here that this is a toxin and should not be being put into your body. What is wrong with you? Well, we know what's wrong with you, but wow.
you're getting a larger glucose load and your blood glucose stays nice and stable. That's the trick.
Yeah, but yours doesn't though, does it, Cyris? No, because look at your A1C. This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. As are you, Cyris, and your mate Robbie. Totally without credibility. You are both criminal misanthropes. You both should be behind bars for what you are doing. Okay? You also ought to issue full refunds to all of your client base immediately and shut down your operation permanently until you can get this right. Okay?
Now, we all know that meats can be hard to give up for a lot of people. And
Why would you? Give up food? I wonder what happens when you give up food. Do you start looking gaunt, emaciated, weakly, poorly? Does the timbre of your voice change in a manner that would suggest that you've given up food? Does your laundry list of hugely problematic, life-shortening, autoimmune dysfunctions flare up and rear its ugly head much, much worse because of your nutrient insufficiency, your destitute diet? Does that happen maybe? Don't know. Comment underneath the video. Boys and girls, tell me whether I'm right about any of those things. Do any of those things happen when you give up food? Maybe? Don't know.
we recommend avoiding or at least significantly reducing your consumption of all meats. Now,
Well, that's a mistake because 4.5 million years of evolution tells us that that's exactly where you should be getting your nutrition from. Meat and animal fat. Mistake. Leads to things like uncontrolled blood glucose and all sorts of problems like that, Cyris.
meats tend to range from, the type that are not ideal for you, even meats like chicken and turkey breasts, to known carcinogens that are class 1A carcinogens.
There are no known carcinogens. None in the food area, Cyris. None at all. There are no experimental evidences to support such a claim existing anywhere. This is ideology. This is anti-science. This is propaganda. This is fear-mongering. This is misanthropy. This is garbage, Cyris, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Carcinogens, like processed meats containing nitrites and heme iron and preservatives.
Heme iron is not a... Jesus, are you serious? Heme iron? The very form in which iron is absolutely designed to be absorbed in a non-toxic form in human beings so that precisely we are able to transport and to capacitate oxygen in our bodies. You want to tell us that? You want to tell me my blood is a carcinogen? The very stuff that courses around in my veins 365 days of the year for every single one of my 50 plus years so far. It's a carcinogen, is it now? Oh, I'm glad we've got you here to tell us about the science, Cyris. You absolute buffoon. You ridiculous little boy. My word. Heme iron is carcinogen. Oh, boy. Get the fuck out of here. What's next?
And cholesterol and a large...
Cholesterol is not a carcinogen either. Neither does it cause heart disease at all. False again.
amount of saturated fat.
Saturated fat is not problematic either. 5 major meta-analyses exist on this topic now, all with multiple million person years of follow-up, all of which agree absolutely and completely in their conclusions that it's not problematic or reason for concern in the human diet whatsoever. Bring yourself up to date, Cyris.
The one area of meat that has shown some possible benefits for insulin resistance is actually not meat per se, but it comes from fatty fish, which are eaten in the traditional Mediterranean and Japanese diets. But much of the research isn't very clear as to whether...
There is no research that's clear on any aspect of human nutrition science, Cyris, anywhere. It does not exist. The experiments are not there.
They're truly beneficial. So we don't necessarily include them in our dietary recommendations. We also suggest avoiding as much dairy as possible. Most cream, dairy, and...
This doesn't smack of ideology at all, does it, boys and girls? It certainly smacks of anti-science. It certainly smacks of theology, the theology of the Grand Church of Anorexia Vegana. Not a single bit of science or a scrap of science, although he did say... evidence-based research. So he must be talking science because he used the words evidence-based research during his little presentation here at one point without providing a single scrap of any of it. Incredible, isn't it?
Cheese products contain significant quantities of saturated fat, and that can increase your risk for heart disease.
Wrong. It does no such thing. False. Complete nonsense.
For obesity, for type 2 diabetes, for chronic kidney disease.
No, none of them. False. All of those claims false. Every single one of them. None of them supported by evidence at all.
And for fatty liver disease.
No, wrong again. You're just making shit up, Cyris, to suit yourself. These are just lies. Absolute lies.
Simultaneously. The fact is that dairy products do raise insulin levels because, again, the saturated fat is...
Saturated fat has nothing to do with insulin levels, Cyris. Insulin, you'll find... occurs in response to the intake of carbohydrates, quite hugely, quite largely, quite markedly and immediately, and less so to certain amino acids, but not to fats to speak of at all. Do you even understand this? No, clearly not.
What accumulates inside of your liver and muscle, and that over the course of time makes insulin action in both of those tissues low, which...
No, it doesn't. Insulin action. No. What happens if you have cells that are replete with energy in the form of fats or carbohydrates or a mixture of both, that the Randall cycle becomes activated and the doors to those cells are locked because precisely they are replete with energy at this time. Simple. Not pathological. That's what's supposed to happen. It's physiology 101, Cyris.
Then causes a backup traffic jam and causes glucose to pool.
Only if you're pouring unnecessary, toxic, contraindicated carbohydrates down your stupid neck 4, 5, and 6 times a day, every day, Cyris. If you're not pouring in unnecessary, contraindicated, toxic, pro-inflammatory, garbage in the form of carbohydrate, then that's not a problem, is it? No, son. What's next?
Inside of your blood. Low-fat diets that we recommend encourage avoiding or significantly reducing your intake of high-fat dairy foods, in particular, like ice cream and butter, and even low-fat dairy foods like cottage cheese or skim milk. If you want to learn more about the danger of eating dairy products,
there is no danger of eating dairy products to speak of. There's only ideology. All you're going to get from this clown and his business partner is theology and ideology, anti-science, dressed up as science, pseudoscience, in other words. And none of it is underpinned by either one of these two criminal misanthropists being able to show a success in their own life in controlling their own blood glucose, because neither one of them can do it. Straightforward. What is next?
we have another video on that, which I highly recommend.
Why would you recommend your own video, which is completely full of fallacies, theology, and anything but actual science of any kind? God. Wow. Wow. Whew. Do tell us all about health, though.
Watching, because that will give you a little bit more insight into the actual research connection between dairy and the
actual research connection. There isn't one, Cyris. Actual research on cause and effect in human nutrition would be via experiments. Do you have any of those? No? We're done here then, aren't we? You're lying again.
prevalence of insulin resistance and many forms of diabetes.
Insulin resistance is a construct and a concept. It cannot be measured, ergo its prevalence cannot be commented upon. The effectiveness or otherwise of the human body at drawing down glucose from the blood is an acute and immediate situation, and it's under the control of the Randall cycle as it should be. What's next?
Now, when it comes to eggs, the common staple that we recommend avoiding that's pervasive in the American diet is the handy dandy happy egg. Now,
well, that's just ridiculous. There's no reason to avoid eggs. None at all. Not a single one.
Yolks are high in cholesterol and
fine. Cholesterol makes up 50% by weight of every membrane of every one of the several trillion cells that make up your body. Cholesterol is also absolutely vital for the production of many of the hormones of the body, the steroid hormones, including estrogen and testosterone. Quite important. Testosterone is, Cyris. That's something that you perhaps don't know very much about, it would seem. That and human nutrition and common sense and science and logic 101 perhaps also on that list of things that you don't perhaps apparently seem to engage with very much. But there you go. What else? Cholesterol is the basis for vitamin D3, which, you know, basically is an important cofactor for every single other enzyme in the entire human metabolic system. Cholesterol makes up myelin, which sees all the neurons and things that need myelination in order so that you can actually function at all. It's pretty damned important, is cholesterol. So why you would want to avoid it, I've got no idea.
Saturated fat. And both
saturated fat, same thing. Saturated fat is the exact form of energy in a chemical form that the human body has absolutely evolved over 4.5 million years to gain the vast majority of energy from. So no problem. Why would you want to avoid that? Unless it's because you want to exacerbate your own also immune dysfunctions variously. Perhaps you also have a bent for looking unhealthy. I don't know. It could happen to someone who avoids taking insufficient nutrition. They might end up looking unhealthy, that particular individual, whoever that may or may not be. I don't know. Maybe that person wants to make money by fleecing others and telling them the exact opposite of what will actually ameliorate their health problem, which is elevated blood glucose, would be via a diet consisting of things that all break down to blood glucose, the very thing that's causing the problem. Perhaps. I don't know. Make your own decisions on that one, boys and girls. While we're here, though, let's just have a reminder from Cyris about his views on whether he'd like to cure type 1 diabetes or not.
Right? Now, if there was a magic pill that I could take today that would eliminate type 1 diabetes, I swear to you, I would not take it. I would not take it because I don't want to get rid of type 1 diabetes.
Right, good. Thank you, Cyris. What's next, son?
Both of those increase your risk for a higher LDL, which is the bad.
Risk for LDL? There is no risk associated with LDL. LDL is a lipoprotein which is manufactured under the instructions of your genes, those genes having survived at least 13.8 billion years of evolution, those genes knowing very well exactly what it is they're doing. LDL is a lipoprotein. It's supposed to be there. It has a purpose. Your body makes it when it needs it.
Bad cholesterol.
Bad cholesterol, says Cyris. No, number one, LDL is not cholesterol, Cyris, at all. So false. And there's only one form of cholesterol, and it's not bad. So just complete, utter fantasy and nonsense. LDL is bad cholesterol. No, because LDL is not cholesterol, and cholesterol doesn't come in different forms. Wrong. False. Completely false from the ground up. Pseudoscience, nonsense, theology. What's next?
And that in turn increases your risk for cardiovascular disease. Now,
false. No, it doesn't. Wrong again. No. Epidemiology cannot inform on risk. That's the only data that you've got, and you haven't even bothered to cite that. Epidemiology is an associative pseudoscience. It's naturalistic observation under no control of any kind whatsoever. It's completely confounded to its core. It shows effectively differences and incidences of disease processes in individuals, which are so close to zero as makes no odds. And it does not inform on cause and effect in any way at all. So false. Risk is a cause and effect statement. Nonsense, Cyris Kambhatta. Absolute nonsense. Rubbish. What's next?
There's meta-analyses that demonstrate in over 1 million people that a higher LDL concentration does in fact increase your risk for cardiovascular disease.
There are no studies that show any such thing because risk is a cause and effect statement. The outcome statistics in absolute terms from those studies are so close to zero as makes no odds for any one given living human being and not over a 100-year lifespan, Cyris. You are a complete charlatan, aren't you? You are an absolute criminal, aren't you? Yes, you are. You are lying to people with malice aforethought in order to feather your own nest and to fleece them of money and to inspire fear in them for something which in fact is an absolutely vital component of human nutrition. Something about which it is absolutely clear and patent you know absolutely nothing whatever. What's next?
This is not up for debate, no matter how.
Yes, it is up for debate. It's absolutely up for debate. That's how you do science. You question the science. And then when you question the science that purports to support an idea that LDL is somehow problematic, you find that the science is absent and there is none. The debate is now over and I have won. You have lost. There we go. End of discussion. You criminal misanthropist. You liar.
How widely debated this is in the general public, from the scientific perspective, it's not debated.
Wrong. Well, correct. It's not debated in the science because there is no science to inform on this question. None at all. It does not exist. And you are a liar.
Our version of a low-fat diet significantly reduces or eliminates eggs altogether. One of the reasons is because they are high in cholesterol, but another.
Well, that's a mistake. There is no need to avoid cholesterol in your diet whatsoever. None at all.
Other reason is because they're also high in saturated fat.
We've covered that. That's not problematic either. Neither cholesterol nor saturated fat, by the way, will raise your blood glucose level. unlike all things carbohydratey and planty, which will. The very things that lead to the problem which you can't control in your life, Cyris, your own blood glucose. Remember?
And a little tidbit for you, saturated fat actually is the most influential nutrient in your food that can raise your cholesterol levels. More.
So what? Of course it is. What's your point?
So than cholesterol itself. Now, do us a favor. I know there's a lot of information here. Leave us a...
No, misinformation, misanthropy, spin doctory, propaganda, fear-mongering, and outright lies from a criminal. A criminal who does not want to help you solve your problem. Remember? Just a few minutes ago. Should we have a look at it again?
Right? Now, if there was a magic pill that I could take today that would eliminate type 1 diabetes, I swear to you, I would not take it. I would not take it because I don't want to get rid of type 1 diabetes.
Good. What's next, Cyris?
Comment. If what we're saying scares you, if you don't like it, if you love it, you tell us what you think.
I think I have done. I think I've been pretty clear.
No, it can be hard to try and pull off what we're suggesting here by limiting.
No, I think you're having a tremendous pull, Cyris. I think your public masturbation is absolutely patent for the world to see. However, what is completely absent is any common sense whatsoever, any scientific background of any kind, or backing to what you have to say of any kind. You yourself hold a PhD. That doesn't mean you know a damn thing about anything, frankly, by the way. It's clear and patent that you don't. Or indeed that this is not actually incompetence, that you are actually criminally, with malice aforethought, behaving in this dangerous, contraindicated, misanthropic manner. I'm starting to suspect that that's actually what's going on here. I think you know damn well. And I think you should go to prison for it. I think you should spend the rest of your very short remaining lifespan, Cyris, in a criminal penitentiary for your behavior towards your fellow man. It is unforgivable behavior, and you should stop, and you should stop today.
Your intake of eggs and dairy products and meat at the same time. And the truth is that it doesn't have to be something that you do overnight, but something that you can do over the course of time. We actually recommend people slowly transition their diet to a more plant-strong diet.
That's a big mistake. You should do the exact opposite.
Because that way you can avoid rapid changes in your blood glucose, which is a good thing because it'll teach you what's cause and what's effect.
Apparently, though, Cyris, those are topics about which you know nothing because you've just said that there's a cause and effect relationship established between two things that are not even strongly associated. You absolute clown. You utter waste of space. Oh, God. Wow. Tell us about health, though, again, son, because we all want to hear about how to be healthy from an absolute expert.
And it'll prevent you from going to the hospital in case you get a very low blood glucose. People ask us all the time. They say,
that's not going to happen anytime for you or Robbie, though, is it, son? Because neither one of you can keep it remotely under control. Oh, my word.
Hey, can I go entirely fat-free? Because I don't want to eat any fat. And the answer,
well, that's a big mistake. That's absolutely ridiculous. That will lead you absolutely and inexorably to a diet which is destitute of nutrition for humans. And you'll suffer the consequences. That's what will happen.
As well, no, you can't actually do that because we recommend eating a low-fat diet because you can't actually eat a zero-fat diet. The only way you would get away with eating a zero-fat diet is if you drank something like water and had honey, but we don't recommend doing that at all.
How is water and honey going to save you from the destitution of nutrient that you will absolutely suffer if you fail to take in a significant and sufficient quantity of fats of the right kind? Explain that to us.
All foods, even foods that come from the whole food plant-based world, such as fruits and vegetables.
What it does, though, point to is how close our friend Saladino is to joining these absolute muppets. Doesn't it? It won't be long before they'll be indistinguishable. if current trends continue. Watch the space. I can't wait to see what happens. It's going to be fascinating. It really is.
And legumes and whole grains, every single one of them contains a small amount of fat. So don't be afraid of fat. That's not the point. The point is just to try and keep your fat intake low.
No, it isn't. That's the worst thing you could possibly do.
Less than 15% of total calories.
No, that's an absolutely ridiculous thing to do. That will lead you to problems, absolutely and inexorably.
And try and minimize your intake of saturated fat.
Well, that's a mistake too, because that flies in the face of 4.5 million years of evolution. It's a mistake.
When you do that, all of a sudden, insulin sensitivity becomes very doable.
How do you measure that, Cyris? Can't be done.
What if I fall off the wagon? People ask me this all the time. People, if you're eating a low-fat diet and you find that your health is improving dramatically, then...
Well, it won't, though. Long term. You might get a short-term improvement over a mixed macronutrient diet, which is even worse. But in the long term, 3 to 5 years, you are going to suffer in a major way. No two ways about that.
Pat yourself on the back. And if you find that you're falling off the wagon because it's hard to integrate into your lifestyle, or maybe you went to a social situation and you decided to eat whatever was in front of you, it's okay. Just get back on track and keep going. You're not likely going to erase all of your progress with one single meal or maybe one weekend of eating improperly. But even if you do set yourself back, just go back to eating a low-fat diet the exact same way that you...
That's a mistake, still.
Were doing before. It's not a big deal. And I don't want you to turn this into a large emotional disaster, because you're human after all. I get it. And change.
And as such, as a human being, what you ought to do is eat a species appropriate, species specific diet for your species. And that is the muscle meats and associated fats of animals, mostly large ruminants, grass fed. Thanks. Easy.
Changing your diet can be a dangerous, or it can be a challenging thing to do. So that's why we recommend doing it slowly. The last thing I'll say is that people often ask us, what about meat substitutes? Because there's a lot of them in the grocery store today.
Oh, God. Just don't go anywhere near any of that chemical shitstorm nonsense. Stay right away from all of that stuff. Simple.
And we recommend this. If you're sticking to fresh plant-based whole foods like jackfruit or durian, which you can prepare in ways that make it look and smell and taste and feel like meat.
No, you can't. You can't do any of those things. And the thing is, again, if your body is craving meat, maybe there's a reason for that. Think of that? No? Okay.
And go for it. Do it all day long. It's totally fine. But there's a lot of plant-based choices in the market that can be a little bit more processed. You can get these Impossible burgers. You can get other plant-based burgers and plant-based chicken nuggets and beyond. Those tend to be relatively highly processed, and they sometimes contain ingredients and additives that you wouldn't find if you were eating just a whole food. So we recommend, again, trying to stay away from the freezer section that has a bunch of packages, and instead going for the whole fruit and then turning that whole fruit into something that might have a meat-like texture.
Or you could eat some meat, which would also contain nutrient and be good for you, unlike the fruit, which will not.
Pretty simple. Now, mastering diabetes isn't just a collection of research, okay? We have an entire community.
You don't have any research, Cyris. Not one scrap of research supports anything you have to say on the topic of human nutrition, health, diabetes, or any of it. You are a criminal misanthropist. You are a propagandist of the highest order. You ought to be in prison. You are a liar. Once again, though, son, do tell us all about how to be healthy, and we'll follow your lead.
Which we've hand built from the ground up. And we utilize these same strategies that I'm telling you here to help people remember.
Again, examples of folks who clearly and patently exude health in every direction, don't they?
First, insulin resistance, which in turn helps them reverse prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, gestational diabetes, and manage type 1 and 1.5 diabetes brilliantly.
No, neither one of you nor Robbie is able to manage your type 1 diabetes even remotely acceptably, let alone ideally, demonstrably shown clearly by your own selves. lies again.
Okay, if you are interested in taking full control of your diabetes health,
then don't listen to these absolute criminals. Not for 1 second. They are leading you up the garden path. They are leading you to a situation whereby you'll have empty pockets and empty hopes and dreams and a shorter lifespan. That is for sure. All right, I've had enough. So we'll finish up there. You know the drill. Join me next time when someone else will be wrong on the interwebs. Perhaps somebody less offensive. Probably not. See you then.